Okay, with that, why don't we call to order the fiscal committee meeting? It's Tuesday, February. Tuesday, February 18th. It is 6:35 p.m. And our first item is as a resolution. I will read it. Be it resolved, it's number 11. Be it resolved that on the recommendation of the superintendent of the schools, that the Board of Education approves the attached contract with Tango Flight, Inc. in the amount of $131,335. Also moved. Do we have a second on the committee? Thank you, Versha. So we have a second. So we'll move to discussion. And I think maybe, Ryan, if you can fill us in on some of this, and I think there's a presentation.
Absolutely. Good evening to the board. Thank you, Mr. George. This is a contract with Tango Flight in the amount of $131,000 to provide an innovative program at AITE, an aircraft building, hands-on and curriculum. Of the $131,000, actually $99,000 is refundable to the district upon the successful completion of the program. So the actual costs to the district upon successful completion are only the difference, about $31,000. I'd like to turn it over for a moment to Dr. Rhodes, who was instrumental in bringing this innovative program to the district. And as Mr. George mentioned, we also have representatives from Tango Flight here who can explain this program far better than any of us can. And so we're hoping the board would find that useful in their deliberations. Dr. Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Feely, and good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here tonight. Before I hand this off to our guests from Tango Flight, I do want to take a couple of minutes to give some larger context around the work that we're doing at AITE. So as we know, AITE is a STEAM school. It's a magnet school, right? It's an inter-district. We rely on bringing students in from outside Stamford and from serving our, 75% of the school serving Stamford students. One of the things that I've been working with Ms. Rivera on this year is it's going to be the 25-year anniversary of AITE coming up. We really wanted to look at AITE and think about really I'm just going to say it, like blowing it out, like wall-to-wall STEAM, and really what is going to set it apart as a magnet as we move into the next 25 years of AITE's future. And so Tango Flight, what we're going to hear about tonight, fits into that. But I do want to, like I said, take a minute or two just to give a larger context to the work that we're doing. So this year right now at AITE, in the spring, we have created a visioning committee. So we have about 12 teachers who we meet monthly, and this is a paid committee. We did a posting, and we meet monthly, but we also pay the teachers outside of that a few hours where we're working on what are the pathways within AITE. And so what we've got that down to is moving forward in the future, there's going to be a biomedical pathway, an engineering pathway, a computer science pathway, and then we don't really have the name yet, but like design, tech, media, art, some kind of pathway. So, and what we're going to look at is that when students come into AITE, they're going to get a taste of all of these 4 pathways and then be able to pick what they're going to be doing for their 4 years. And we already have Project Lead the Way there. We have Project Lead the Way Biomedical, Project Lead the Way Engineering, and Project Lead the Way Computer Science. But right now, students can opt into that program, but they don't have to opt into that program. They can just take different courses at AIT and move through. We're looking at making it that all of the students upon coming in will get a taste of these 4 different pathways and then choose what they want to do and have a 4-year course requirement within those pathways. And like I said, this is the work of the teachers. There are 12 teachers approximately who are working on this, and we'll be creating team leaders for each of those pathways in the future. And I actually just went to Indiana at the Project Lead the Way headquarters with Ms. Rivera, 2 of her teachers, and Rob DeAndrade, who works downtown with secondary STEM. So where this Tango Flight comes in and what you're going to hear about is that in the engineering pathway, the students will take a 9th grade Project Lead the Way course, a 10th grade Project Lead the Way course, and then there's going to actually be a choice where students can continue in 11th and 12th grade with Project Lead the Way Engineering, or Tango Flight is going to be the option for 11th and 12th grade. So we're going to be doing something similar with biomedical, where there's a Project Lead the Way pathway, and then the health not health services, but like the pathway that's at West Hill, like for public health and EMT training. And then we're still working on the other two, computer science and design tech. But so here we are, we have this vision, we know where we're going, wall-to-wall pathways with AITE. And where we got to Tango Flight in this is that there's a community member who brought it to Ms. Rivera and talked about this, what was going on. I think that at that point, Tango Flight was at a school in Bridgeport where they were already well on their way to building a plane at one of their schools. And I think, and Craig and Dan are on here and I can see them nodding and smiling. So they're going to give way more detail about this, but this is how it came to us through Ms. Rivera. And then I met with Dan and Craig. We did some, some Zooms. I think Ryan Feely was on one of them, if I'm not mistaken. We really heard about the program and we saw how feasible this is for us to do. And so here we are. So what I've asked Dan and Craig to do, and I'll share my screen, they have a short presentation. They're going to tell you about Tango Flight. And then we do have a really fun, about 2-minute video at the end, some news coverage from Tennessee, where they covered a school doing the Tango Flight in in one of their schools. So I will share my screen and I will hand this off to our guests.
Well, I got to tell you, that's a perfect lead in, Dr. Rhodes, because kind of the way Tango Flight came to exist, Dan, who's also on with me, Dan was actually setting up engineering programs in Central Texas back when Texas first kicked off CTE. And part of the issue that he ran into and that a lot of professionals ran into was we would start students in the STEM pipeline or in the engineering pipeline, and they do great 9th and 10th grade. And then by the 11th grade year, they'd be multidisciplinary, and suddenly they had lost interest or they had faded. And so Dan was trying to come up with ways to keep everyone focused and moving in the pipeline all the way to the end of the pathway. And in Dan's mind, it made perfect sense. Have them build an airplane. That made no sense to any administrators anywhere in the state of Texas. So that was just not going to happen. He finally beat one district down and convinced them to let him try. And we did, and a little regional news story out of Austin became a national news story on a slow weekend. And as a result, Airbus Americas reached out a few weeks later and said, hey, we saw this. We'd like to bring it to communities where our children are. And we'd like our folks to volunteer, and we'd like for our children to build airplanes in high school. And so Dan, being the great educator that he is, said, well, give me 2 years to get the curriculum stabilized and I'll be back in touch. And they said, well, we'd like to start in 3 months. So why don't you fly up here and let's see what we can do. So in true private industry, that's the way things kind of move. So gets up to Wichita, and there's the Dean of Education and the Dean of Aerospace Engineering from Wichita State University. And they looked at the curriculum he had, and they put a team on it and got it to where we could crosswalk it. And so that was our very first expansion, and it taught us a valuable lesson. One, the earth is not flat and does not fall off when you walk out of Texas. So that was the first thing that we learned. That was really important for us. And the second thing is that some things in Texas are a little ridiculous. So we've learned that as we've gone across the country and grown a little bit. I'll take you through and just talk to you real quick about what we are. If you could go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
Thank you. And the next one. There it is. We're an educational nonprofit. The board's steerage for us is to introduce students to the world of aviation and aerospace. And I say this sincerely. It's one of the greatest opportunities I've ever seen in education. It is truly one of those that we provide, if you think of it as a college chemistry class, you've got your classroom, you've got where you go for your lectures and you're going to take your exams, you're going to have activities, you're going to have videos, things like that to watch and do, all happening in the classroom side. And then in your lab side, where you would go in college to blow things up, this is where they're going to actually build the airplane, is in the lab. And the difference is they're going to spend more time in that lab than we were ever allowed to in college. So this is what we're introducing to folks. And if you go to the next slide for me. This is why So most of you know the Boeing study. The Boeing study comes out and they update it annually. But these numbers are growing. This is 2.1 million new jobs over the next 20 years on top of the aviation aerospace industry that's already in place. And so for all the airlines and everything. And so when you think about these and when you look at the median salaries of these folks, 20 years from now is the mid-work life of your students right now. And so what we're looking at is great, secure jobs with great financial futures for young people, whether they choose to go to college or whether they choose to go vocationally. The opportunities are here, and they're introduced to those through this program. Next. This is the airplane we build. It's the Vans RV-12IS. Vans is the largest worldwide manufacturer of kit planes. And this is called an experimental light sport aircraft. It's a two-seater. It has a 100 horsepower Rotax engine, start-stop, autopilot. It does 100 miles, about 120 miles on 3.5 gallons of unleaded fuel. It is a great little airplane, and everybody loves it. Touch screen, Garmin electronics. It's just state of the art, and it's beautiful. We experimented with other planes, but for several reasons. High school students take quickly to the technical drawings and plans of Vans aircraft, and within 2 weeks, you'll see the students are able to follow along and to go through the plans and to know what they do next and what they do next. And so as this process goes along, it really helps them grow in their ability to look at technical drawings, understand the measurements for aircraft and aviation. All those things begin to be a part of this. Not to mention their use of tools, the hand tools, the riveting, all the work that goes into putting this aircraft together. Next. So real quick, I retired out of the Navy. I was a ship driver, so the only thing I ever did was made fun of pilots for my whole career. But when I retired out of the Navy, I went to work for the Navy doing a JROTC curriculum, writing curriculum for Navy schools and for Navy programs. And so the very first thing Dan and I, when we were talking about this and how to round this out, the folks at Wichita State gave us a great curriculum, but they don't do the things that teachers really need done, especially STEAM CTE type teachers. And that is, when you sit down on Sunday afternoon and you teach 3 different, very different courses, there's nothing more fun than sitting down to write the lesson plans, do the PowerPoint decks, come up with a quiz for each of them, come up with an exam, an activity, and something that they've got to do for homework. And so the first thing we did was we sat down and we rounded all that out. We provided all the lesson plans for the classroom, the PowerPoint decks, the in-class activities, quizzes, exams, everything they need to run that classroom. So instead of having to spend 2 to 3 hours doing this on a Sunday, they can look over this for 20 minutes and they're ready to go for the class for the week. Next. As I said, it's a twin track curriculum. So the top, the part in white is the traditional classroom. That's all the things they're going to be learning while they're in the classroom. All of this comes out of FAA manuals. None of this is self-created or anything like this. We need them to learn how to use the ATPs that come from the FAA, because whether they're going to be an aerospace engineer, a pilot, or a mechanic, they need to be able to manipulate the documents from the FAA. And so all of this comes straight from the FAA documents. The aircraft construction curriculum is actually the part, I don't brag on Dan a lot because he's already got a big head, but this was the part that's actually kind of the brainchild piece of this. It's the proprietary piece that makes it possible for us to do this with high school students. When they build these kits, they've been built for years and years and years under the idea that somebody and their friend are going to stand in a garage or in a hangar and work together to build this airplane over time. When you have 20 students who want to touch an airplane every day of their life, it becomes a very difficult challenge to have them all on task and working throughout the build of this plane. And so we sent Dan into a dark room. He came out with what was basically a dependencies chart that allows for the build of this aircraft by the students in different teams, and it doesn't matter which team, or they're interchangeable on the teams, but that keeps everyone hands-on and working through about 85 to 92, 93% of the build before it necks down to just a few students at each time working on it. So this really provides for a way for the students to stay engaged and working and on task. One things I will say about it also that makes it great is Dan provides within our domain, we have the provisions. Each section is updated. We're in lockbox with the manufacturer. So every time they make a change to the plans or an update on the plans, it's immediately there. Anytime the FAA has a change or has a warning or notice on any piece or part, it's immediately there. Everything is there. Not only that, PowerPoints that kind of show, hey, it looks like it goes this way, but it really goes this way. And to do those things over time, Dan and I have learned almost everything you can do wrong in building airplanes, in curriculum, in basic education. We've learned every mistake, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times, but we eventually get it. And so what we've done is we've incorporated all that into the PowerPoint so they can see it. The best ones of all, though, Dan has a lot of friends in the industry who do time-lapse videos. And we have those within the domain. Not everything looks like an airplane part when you start or a component to an airplane, but when you see it all drawn out and then in time-lapse video, 1,500 pieces come together as one unit, the students then know what they're working toward. They know what it's going to look like. They know what the end result is of what they're doing. Next, please. As we told Dr. Rhodes, the teacher can be, I mean, we always hope teachers can spell airplane. We would expect them to be able to do that. But I used to say, you know, they don't even have to be able to spell airplane. We will teach them what they need to know when we come. We do in-person training with them and with the volunteers from within the community who want to help the students in the building of the airplane. We come together with them in person. We do the training. We prepare them for it. And when we leave, the teacher will feel comfortable stepping off. We cover the gamut of teachers who teach this course. And we have an auto tech teacher teaching in one location, and we have a PhD in aerospace engineering teaching this program. And they're both extremely successful for totally different reasons, but it works, and we make sure that they're ready to do it. Next. I always thought this part would never work because I never thought anybody really actually wanted to volunteer to help high school students do anything. And so that was my first thing. I told Dan, you'll never be able to find people or trick people into going into schools and helping high school students build the airplane, except where he was. I thought that's a one-off. But so far, 38 trainings, 38 programs, and we have never failed to have great community support for this. The aviation community is small, but it is very aggressive in wanting to pass on the excitement of aviation and aerospace. And so they come out of the woodwork to want to help students. And so we always find that to be really good. And it's such a great feeling because these folks really come together and volunteer their time. And the bigger problem that we have, Dan always points this out, but the bigger problem we have is not having enough mentors to show up and help with the build. It's getting mentors to go home when it's done. We have mentors who come and want to just sit through the classroom section and just sit there. They want to be there. They want to have any help they can be in building that airplane. They want to be a part of it. And so it's worked out really, really well. Next. We tried to work off solar power. It didn't work. We still have to use the vulgar dollar system. And so that's what we're on here. This is how much it costs the nonprofit to actually produce everything. I do want to say this. One of the things we try to make sure of is administrators, a lot of folks, you know, everybody thinks, oh, administrators, you know, so they've got the big jobs and all that stuff. They're swamped. And it's constant. Teachers are swamped, administrators are swamped, everybody is swamped. And so one of the things we've done our very best to do is to make this a completely transparent process and an invisible process to the upper echelon. In other words, everything we do, we make sure the curriculum subscription is there and in place. And I answer the phone every day about questions on the curriculum or what should we do with this. Dan is always available for technical support, or one of our other team members on technical support. If you've just got one question, you've got an hour and a half in the build time, and you got one question to get everybody going. 20 kids looking at you, and you get a voicemail. Nothing worse. We make sure that all of this technical support, even the ordering of parts. I know you're going to all find this shocking, but students sometimes lose things and students sometimes break things. It was a shock to us when we learned that, but we've actually built this system so that the teacher doesn't have to go out with a purchase order and get a request to buy another part. It just automatically comes. We order it for them. We set aside so much to reorder parts and just have them shipped straight to the teacher so that there's no breakup in work or time off task. And so we do all that. We also make sure that the FAA, for the inspection, we have the designated airworthiness representative. We have them scheduled. We pay them. We take care of that. We make sure all registration, certifications, insurance, everything is covered by us. As a matter of fact, the district is never listed. The manufacturer of this aircraft is Tango Flight Incorporated. It's Vans Aircraft Incorporated. It's not Tango Flight. It's not the school district. It's Vans, because of the way this carve out was made by the FAA. This allows for, if you follow the instructions, which we do verbatim, everyone follows the instructions. It's done exactly as the airplane manufacturer says. The airplane company is actually the manufacturer of this. We also have a jumbo liability policy that we maintain, and we add each school district as an additional insured. So in case someone's hurt when they're working on the plane, or if anything happens while they're working on the plane or building the plane, that's covered, and the school district is covered too. So all that's covered and all that's taken care of in this fee. So that's the annual curriculum fee. Next. This is the partnership fee. We've tried different words, different language. Some really big districts don't like the refundable part because they have to track the money for 10 years. If they build 5 airplanes and it takes 10 years to do it, they don't want to have to keep up with $99,962 for the whole time. For those districts that don't want to track it themselves, that's fine. We call it a partnership fee, and we track it because at the end of this, it is a nonprofit and we're a zero-sum game for everything. So this comes back, that $99,962 comes back as a donation to the school district. However it's worked and whatever it needs to be called, it's called that so that it works for the school district and so they can move forward with it. The one thing I will say, the annual fee that we talked about is Perkins friendly. So that all meets the requirements of Perkins funds and is federal government righteous in that. The refundable program fee is a little different, obviously, because it is refundable and so not as Perkins friendly as the first part. Next. And this is a one-time cost. It's $16,500. It covers the cost of the in-person training for the instructors and mentors, as well as while we're there, we will build a vertical stabilizer with the mentors and with the teacher. That's a tail section of the airplane. We'll actually build it. They'll build it there over the few days we're with them. It'll be completed, and but all that is covered in that cost. And then we had schools when we were much smaller and dumber. We would tell school districts to buy the aviation tools that they needed, and we'd give them the names of places they could buy them. Well, there's one in Iowa, there's one in Georgia, and they won't take purchase orders, and we didn't know that. And so school districts, we'd show up to do training, they still didn't have the tools. So we got to deal with the manufacturers. They're small tool manufacturers, but we have a deal, and $7,500 provides for up to 25 students the total tool package needed on these aviation tools, and they last forever. So it's not like you're recurring that cost every year. So that's the one-time cost. So this is like our, hey, here's how we're different. The one thing that I will tell you that's the most different about us is you'll actually know Dan and I. We show up, and we show up sometimes more than you want, but we show up, and we show up to not for gotcha or anything like that, but we have found that you can do 100 Zoom calls, but there's nothing like standing next to that airframe for somebody to go, oh, here's something and they've always got something that they're interested in or something that doesn't work quite right and that they didn't think of and that they never bring up. And so being there, Dan also likes to go around. He likes to work with the students some during the year as he travels around and show them some tricks of the trade and how, you can get through some of these steps very efficiently. And so he does that. We find that going around and visiting is the best way to ensure quality, which is one of the things we're most concerned about. And we build our entire process. We're a very slow growing nonprofit. We only grow a few programs each year so that we can make sure that the quality control is in place and so that we're able to oversee and manage everything as the build goes forward. And there's our bottom line. I think that's the meat of it anyway. And if you've got the video, Dr. Rhodes, we can show that, and then I'll answer any questions anybody might have.
All righty. Let's see the kids, right?
Yeah.
All right, maybe someone just give me a thumbs up that I know that you can hear the audio. You can hear it?
It appears to be a somewhat normal high school class, teachers interacting with the kids. But what's being done here is extraordinary. For these 12 students in aviation instructor Scott Campbell's class are building an airplane. Yep, an actual FAA approved 2-passenger 4-cylinder RV-12IS airplane.
Just like me, I've never built a plane, so I really didn't know what to expect. And so these students didn't either, but they came in with lots of enthusiasm, really have an open mind, excited to do something different and be really the first group of kids that gets to build a plane at Cleveland High School.
This is the first year for this undertaking, part of the school's career and technical education program, fully accredited for the kids, 2 credits. School administrators, led by CTE supervisor Rennie Wittenbarger, pitched the idea, went through all the steps, secured the funding, and then watched as all of the plans fell into place.
And it's almost like sticker shock. I can't believe this is happening at a high school level. We're one of, I think, 22, I think they said, in the nation, high schools doing this. And I thought, well, if they can do it, Cleveland High School kids can do it.
Basically, the plane comes in boxes and crates with detailed instruction. You lay out all the parts and away you go.
Well, to me, it's pretty difficult, just getting used to the flow of things. It's very different than your usual program, like any other classroom.
It's a big challenge for the students. So much so that we partner with some gentlemen and ladies in the local community who want to volunteer their time and give back to students. And so we bring these, what we call mentors in the classroom, how to read technical drawings. It's a lot of things for a teenager to try to pull together by themselves.
Campbell, who's a retired Air Force pilot, says it'll probably take 2 years for this airplane to be finished up. That means the 9 seniors in the group will not be able to celebrate its completion, but they'll always know they had a hand in something pretty cool and pretty special. From Cleveland, Dave Staley, News 12.
All right. So I will say they have more, Tango Flight has more polished promotional videos, but I was like, let's get the ones with the kids actually doing the work in the local news coverage. So I asked for the Tennessee video. Can I end the PowerPoint, Craig? Is that okay? Like,
Yes, ma'am. Certainly.
Okay. All right. So, so thank you. Thank you both for being here. Thank you for helping to bring this to life. So I think I kind of outlined how this is going to be at AITE. This is a course that will be in the fall and spring on the semesterized classes. So the kids will actually get 4 credits for doing it, 2 in their junior year, 2 in their senior year. And then you saw we'll get the curriculum and we'll work closely with Tango Flight. So I will ask if there are any questions, or maybe Ryan, I don't know if you take over at that part, but see if we have any questions.
I want to know when I can do a flyover.
Well, listen, I said Joe Kaza's going up first. So
Oh,
and he and I have kids the same age. So I was like, you're going up first. But here's, before I get to Dr. Hammond, here's what I learned out of this the most. So, and Craig, you didn't really highlight it. So I'm going to say, for someone who doesn't know, that actually we don't, and you guys can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, we don't really call it an airplane. They build it to 98%. And then the FAA will take it over, I think, to Westchester Airport and finish the last 2%. And that's when it gets to be called an airplane, when it gets to that 100% completion.
That's right.
Legally, it's not an airplane until the FAA issues the paperwork. Some states, some schools, it's a really big deal not to have an airplane on campus. Some don't care. But we generally, you can do about 98% of the build at your campus, move it to the airport, get the FAA inspector out. Usually once we move it to the airport, we're a week to 2 from flying it. So you really do almost everything at the school. Take it out there, do that final inspection, do a couple engine runs, a few other odds and ends, and then we go fly the thing. Fly off the test hours. There's 10 hours of test flights that have to be done. Sounds way scarier than it is. It's just a very regimented procedure you go through. And then we absolutely want everybody involved, principals, students, of course, administrators, school board members, anybody that would like. I've been told I'm not allowed to say you have to get a ride in the airplane. That was construed as a threat. But anybody that would like a ride in the airplane, we want to make darn sure you get a chance to get a chance to go up in the plane.
And then that part of that, right, is that just in the contract, we keep the plane for a couple months. We do promotional, right? And
Absolutely.
then this wasn't part really of the presentation, but then what happens is Tango Flight takes the plane and they will sell it, and we get another kit if we want to do this again, another 2-year cycle, right? If we don't want to, we call it a day. We get the approximately $100,000. We said we built a plane and we sever, but but otherwise that's what the deposit is. We would get another kit and we would do this again with a new group of kids.
You never pay the deposit again. And when you're done with us, whether it's 1 plane or 20 planes, you get it back at the back end.
Yeah. All right. So
Okay.
Dr. Hammond, would you?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Ham.
Oh, sorry, Mr. George. I didn't know.
Yeah, no, that's okay. This is definitely physics at its finest, with thrust and lift and the calibration of tools, because I had the opportunity to work with FAA and Stratford School for Aviation. But my question is, what is the record? So it's exciting, it's rigorous, engaging. How many of these students then go on to Embry-Riddle or, onto actually flight programming? Have you kept records in that?
We don't track it. We don't track it exactly because we just don't have the bandwidth to track kids, you legally, and different states. That gets really difficult. But I can spend the next 10 hours telling you stories, firsthand stories of students. I mean, I've got a young lady working for SpaceX. I know of 4 or 5 kids that are flying right seat on regionals. Your first aircraft job. Oh gosh, I can think of at least 9 or 10 kids that have their A&P, the license you need to work on aircraft, just a couple, 3 years out of high school. One young man's already started his own company working on this type of small airplane. He has his A&P license, started his own business. I can think of, Craig, $2-3 million in scholarships.
Yes.
Military scholarships students have gotten. Turns out when you go to do your interview for your ROTC scholarship and they ask you what you did in high school and you say built an airplane, that tends to get everybody's attention when you mention that. So, I mean, tons of really great success stories. One young lady, she's 22, took 2 years off after high school, got her private, instrument, commercial, and multi-engine, those are all airplane license, and her A&P by 20. Ran into her at Oshkosh, the big air show, took her to an event with some Delta executives, and I was honestly kind of concerned that the one VP was going to kidnap her. He was literally offering her a job either on the flight line or maintenance department starting the next Monday. And she was a little terrified because she promised her dad she's going to go to college and go get your degree, get his phone number, call him later. So, it's amazing the opportunities these kids. Frankly, I'm jealous. They weren't there when I was their age. So it's really neat to see how many different options they have. We get really 3 major tracks the kids go on. The A&P, the mechanic side, which is great for the kids that don't want to go do a 4-year degree, want to get directly into the workforce. We've got agreements with a lot of technical schools, a number of tech schools around the country, where in about a year or to less in some places, they can have their A&P. A tech school close to me told me their last round of kids were getting offers at right around $100,000 to start, which is mind-boggling. how quickly that's gone up. We get about a third that want to become pilots, some sort of commercial pilot, either flying the airlines, regional jets, whatever. And then we get a third that is kind of near and dear to my heart, the ones that want to go the engineering route, whether it's aerospace, mechanical, or some other type of engineering. And, so that's a sizable chunk as well.
Well, I had to ask because that's where we know it's exciting. And it basically, if the A&P license is pretty amazing that you can come out with $70, $80, $90 an hour starting.
I know,
It's amazing.
It stinks when I'm paying someone to work on my airplane, but it's good for them.
Other questions from board members? Yeah, Antonia.
I just want to say this is so exciting because I wish it was earlier for my son. I have a child that is a pilot and went through a lot of these things. And it's so funny because as you were talking, he just came in and walked in. And I said, did you hear that? I put the camera off. He went to the other room and I said, you know what? Maybe you can stop by some days there and also talk a little about your experience as a pilot now and all that you went through. So this is exciting for a lot of families here in the community because if the children have this start, it gives them something for later on, like you said it, Dan, if they want to go into the space engineering, because that's how he started it, then wasn't what he wanted to finish. And then he decided to go into the pilot and went through all the licenses and all of that. So I think it gives them an opportunity. And I think it's a great, great opportunity for a lot of children. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Okay, Lori, is there anything else, or Ryan, from your side or from the presenters?
No, not unless the board has further questions.
I think we're good to go to vote on the resolution. It's been moved and seconded. If there's no more discussion, then let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the Tango Flight contract, please indicate by raising your hand and saying aye. On the committee, 1, 2, 3, 4 from Prasad. And do we have, oh, Mike Larabine is not here, right? He's missing. Okay, so we have 4 on the committee here.
He's here.
Oh, there he is. Oh, Michael, you're here. Did you vote yes?
No. Did not vote yes.
Yeah,
He voted no.
He voted no. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So we have 4 in favor, 1 opposed, and no abstentions. So this will move ahead to the board meeting next week, but not on the consent agenda because we did not have full agreement. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rhodes, and thank you, Tango, for coming.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan and Craig, too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Moving on to contracts over 100,000, we have resolution 12, which is be it resolved that on the board of that on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education approve the attached 2024-25 purchase for 1 special education student requiring out-of-district tuition at a total cost of $133,350. Also moved. Do we have a second from the committee? Second from Michael Larabina. Thank you. Discussion? We have Dr. Hammond.
Yes, thank you. Is this a new student or is this one student that's been outplaced for a while?
Unless one of my colleagues is on and knows, I'll have to research that and provide that information.
I think just, my recommendation is that we know, coming up because we have 220 outplaced. Is this a new student or someone that's already, working in and out placement? I think that'll be helpful with voting in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, then taking it to a vote, all those in favor of approving the contract for this special education student indicate by saying aye and raising your hand so I can see we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this time. So it's 5-0-0 on the committee approving it. So it'll go to the consent agenda next week. Thank you. Resolution 13. Be it resolved that on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools that the Board of Education approves the attached contract with Safe Transport Services in the amount of $250,000. Also moved. Do we have a second? A second from Mr. Hyman. Thank you. Discussion. Or maybe I should ask actually first from Ryan, do you have comments?
Of course. Safe Transport Services is one of 3 of our special education transportation providers. The prior contract that we had negotiated with Safe Transport was for under $100,000. It did not require board approval. They've taken on a larger percentage of our special education routes, and so the compensation to them is exceeding $100,000, which is why the amendment is coming to the board.
Okay. Thank you. Questions, Ms. Hammond?
Yes, thank you. How many students does Safe Transport Services transport for 250,000?
I don't know. I'll have to research that number and get that for you as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, sure. Mr. Hyman?
Mr. Feely, in this particular instance, is this $250 fee based on a per diem or a per student, or is it based on an estimate of what may be charged over the next year?
It is an estimate. Putting a per student rate can be difficult because some of the in-district buses may have a number of students, whereas some students may be required to, due to safety, to drive with only 1 or 2 other students. So we can certainly provide a number that we expect, but to your point, it is an estimate of the total maximum compensation that we would pay to this vendor.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. And that does help, Mr. Hyman. That does put it in perspective. Any other questions for Mr. Feely or on this? All right, then let's take it to a vote on the committee. All those in favor of approving the contract with Safe Transport? All those in favor, raise your hand. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 in favor. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Prasad, where are you on this? Because I think you're the one who hasn't. You're muted. You're voting.
I'm voting yes.
You're voting yes. Okay. So then it's 5-0-0 to approve this contract. It'll be on the consent agenda for next week. Okay, thank you. Lastly, we have a budget transfer. Resolution 14, be it resolved that on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, that the Board of Education approve the 2024-25 operating budget transfer totaling $81,354 as detailed in the attached documents. The guys so moved. Do we have a second on the committee? Second from Versha. Thank you. And this does relate to the
Tango Flight
contract. Right. Yeah.
As was discussed during the presentation, ideally, an innovative project like Tango would be grant funded, but due to the nature of the financing, where there's a refundable amount that could come back at an indeterminate time in the future, grant funds are not really appropriate. In order to fund this, though, we did source another grant that was able to absorb some other costs not related to that project. And that freed up the funds to fund Tango per the terms that were described tonight. And this budget transfer moves funds into an AITE science account for that purpose. I hope that was explanatory enough.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions about that? Any big questions about the budget transfer? or Ryan? Okay, if not, then let's take this to a vote. All those in favor of the budget transfer as presented, indicate by saying aye and raising your hand. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 on the committee approving. Thank you. None opposed, none abstaining. So this will also be on the consent agenda for next week. That concludes the fiscal committee agenda. So I'll move for adjournment. Do I have a second? Second from Versha, thank you. All those in favor? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we stand adjourned at 7:20 p.m. Thank you.